Hola, hola. Sí, buenos días, buenas tardes y buenas noches.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you who are joining us from different parts of the world. Welcome to today's roundtable entitled Ensuring the Diversity of Free Voices in the Media. I am Luis Albornoz. I am the moderator of today's panel. I'm a director of the research group Audiovisual Diversity at the Carlos III University, Madrid. I am also one of the authors of the UNESCO World Report, Rethinking Policies for Creativity, thinking about culture as a public good, where we analyze the current state of diversity policies in and from media and also artistic freedom throughout the world. These are two items that are included in today's debate. In the coming hour, we'll discuss why promoting the diversity in media and also content diversity is connected to the need to protect the artistic freedom and how the challenges related to artistic freedom affect the diversity of mass media and also content diversity. As everyone knows, journalists and artists from all over the world are still targeted and censored. This has increased in the last few years. In the digital era, there is an increasing concern regarding the regulation of online speech and also the opaque algorithms behind digital platforms that might hinder the access to accurate information and also affect our possibility to find creative and diverse contents. The WINCOG Declaration, the WINCOG Plus 30 Declaration, information is a public good. This happened in Namibia last year, and also it was adopted by the General UNESCO Conference. It asks countries to create a positive environment to enable the freedom of expression and also the access to information, and also that we should have pluralistic, free and independent media by passing the necessary legislation. The declaration also requests governments to take effective actions in order to promote media diversity within public, private and community media. And they should also be feasible, and they should apply specific policies in order to ensure independent and quality journalism in order to guarantee to ensure the access, to make sure that people can have access to diverse and trustworthy information. However, as following the cultural diversity UNESCO's report, evidence-based policy and participation-based policy remains the exception and not the rule. The Ashaq UNESCO program defends the rights of artists and culture professionals as a set of rights protected by international regulations, including the 2005 UNESCO Convention on the Protection and Promotion of Cultural Expressions, and also the 1980 recommendation on the artist's condition. The mass media have an essential role in achieving those goals. However, the diversity of media owners or managers and the contents created and disseminated is not a fact. Therefore, it's very important to apply policies to ensure the diversity of and in the mass media. As the various media are now used more than ever to access cultural contents, the role to ensure the diversity of cultural expressions is essential. Audiovisual narratives in the media guide our perceptions of the world. The series, films, and they help us build and extend stereotypes and prejudice about people that are different. However, they might also be windows that invite people to meet each other, therefore helping people to create their own image and to understand other people. This is why we need a diverse media system, because it will help us see minority groups, enhance our understanding of each other, and ensuring that no stakeholder is the owner of social narratives. Therefore, we should raise our voices and talk about the importance of protecting and promoting a diversity of free voices in the media. As our panel has been organized by the Ashbury UNESCO Program for Artists and Cultural Professionals, generously supported by the Kingdom of Norway, I would like to invite Mr. Asken Steinar, the chief of the mission of the Norwegian Embassy in Buenos Aires, to say a few words before we give the floor to our panelists. Mr. Steinar, you have the floor.
Press Freedom Day Global Conference, Journalism Under Digital Siege. In the digital era, media diversity and independent quality journalism is an increasingly important source for reliable information and for ensuring inclusive societies. In many ways, we see that the digital era positively has contributed to the way we see, read, and consume news. More people than ever before are now able to access and take part in sharing knowledge and exchanging views. However, the digital landscape has and will continue to significantly influence the media sector. We know that changing media habits and global competition pose a threat to media diversity. Local media news outlets and legacy media are particularly vulnerable. We see across the world that local news media are facing pressure due to digitalization and, more recently, because of the pandemic and its negative impacts on human rights and democracy. Community media and legacy media's role in informing the public and ensuring an open and inclusive public debate, thus reinforcing democracy, cannot be understated. Therefore, national regulations that support and safeguard independent and diverse media is so important. In Norway, let me remind you, we are only 5 million people. We are proud to have more than 200 newspapers. Public financing helps support a diversity of print, broadcast, and digital media outlets. Media outlets also receive indirect support in the form of VAT exemption. Regulations that protect media outlets and journalists from surveillance, political control, and censorship, including in the digital space, is important. The media's own self-regulation is another approach that is important to preserve media independence and professional media. This approach works well in Norway, but it's important for me to underscore that each model of regulation must be adapted to the situation in each individual country. Independence and transparency must complement these approaches. Like journalists, writers, musicians, and other artists are across the world often subjected to censorship, discrimination, and persecution. Artists and cultural workers are also increasingly using digital platforms to promote their artwork and to get new audiences. Just as for journalists, artists' online safety must be protected to ensure the promotion of their cultural expressions. It is frequently the artists who call attention to problems in society, spell out uncomfortable truths, speak the unspoken, and make the unseen visible, using their artistic and cultural expressions, and creating spaces for debate in the public sphere and the media. As artists are often initiators of critical thinking and change, and regularly found in the front lines fighting injustice and suppression, the voices of artists and artistic freedom are crucial for protecting and promoting freedom of expression. Attacks against journalists, both online and offline, is increasingly representing a dangerous trend where voices are silenced. Reports have shown us that women, journalists, and media workers are particularly vulnerable to online violence, posing a threat to their freedom of expression, but also the public's right to information. Fostering diversity in the media sector and developing inclusive content is essential to preserve both the independence and viability of media institutions. Moreover, in a diverse range of voices in the media better represent the society in which we live in and can therefore build audience trust and ensure the media's relevance. COVID-19 has led to a democratic backslide globally. It has also led to a vulnerable media sector where loss in revenue is becoming ever apparent. But the democratic backslide doesn't necessarily mean the fight for meaningful participation and democracy is decreasing. Rather, we see that it brings out important voices to showcase the opposite, not least in the media sector, where brave journalists every day speak truth to power and report on corruption and abuse, demonstrating the very essence of the role of the press to act as society's watchdog. A diversity in media is essential in this regard to mirror our societies and to gain and regain trust in public institutions and democracy. Norway remains committed to promoting democracy and freedom of expression and information globally by strengthening media diversity and media freedom. UNESCO is a key international partner for Norway in this regard. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señor Steindl.
Thank you, Mr. Steindl. Let us now go to today's panelists, our guests from different parts of the world. They are experts and defenders of artistic freedom. First of all, we have Blanca Cruz from Mexico. She's an expert at the EU UNESCO program, design of policies that support indigenous radios and community radios in Mexico. She has been an advocate for adapting the legal framework for community and indigenous radio in Mexico, and she has helped policy design in this regard. She has also helped with public policy for these media. We also have here today Cecilia Noce from Argentina. She's an expert in artistic freedom, and she leads the Cultural Rights Center at the CADAL. She focuses on showcasing the challenges of Latin American artists, such as forced having to go to another country and censorship. Then we have Rana Najjar from Lebanon. She's a reporter, an editor, a journalist, a writer, and activist in communication media. She has 20 years of experience. She has worked in international, local, and pan-Arabic media, also TV channels in the Middle East. She's passionate about culture, and she covers cultural and international cultural and artistic activities, festivals, biennials, etc. And she writes about the cinema, painting, literature, activism, and women artists. And finally, from Senegal, we have Awa Girard. She's an entrepreneur. In 2017, she founded Deedo, which is a streaming platform focuses on Pan-African music. In 4 years, Deedo has become a key stakeholder in the African musical community, and it has increased the visibility of artists in the continent. Finally, we would like to show you the current cultural expressions. We will have El Faraón, an Uruguayan artist. These distinguished panelists will share with us their opinions about the importance of the freedom of feasible public and private media outlets, and also to help us guarantee the people's access to relevant, diverse, and trustworthy contents. They will also talk about the importance of artistic freedom in that process, and also the intersections between media and culture. Blanca, you have worked with indigenous organizations and communities in various countries around Latin America, and you have facilitated community development projects. I know that representing different social groups is quite a sensitive matter. For instance, women, immigrants, people with disabilities, immigrants, etc. It's a very sensitive matter. Can you tell us how you think these vulnerable groups are affected, including indigenous peoples, because of the lack of diversity within mass media? And why should they be the focus of public policy making as vulnerable groups? Thank you, Luis. Thank you, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you, thank the panelists, and thank you to all the people who are here from around the world. Thank you, UNESCO, for actually creating this forum, and now we can exchange these ideas. I would like to briefly say the following. First, I'd like to talk about my dress. There's a long story behind getting this dress here today. But to be brief, I would like to tell you that this is a dress made by Wayuu women. Wayuu women live in the territory known as Guajira in Mexico. This is the border between Colombia and Venezuela. It's the Wayuu Nike. The Wayuu women have done this with their hands, and this involves an artistic freedom process from the community. There is a creation moment where the colors are thread and where they pour their souls and spirit into it. And it's this garment is their way to give themselves to the world. It was a present I was given. As we're going to talk about diversity, we should also celebrate this diversity. We should be able to say that how this diversity nourishes us. And I allow myself to be nourished by diversity. In this case, it's the Wayuu women. And I am celebrating what they do, which speaks of them, but also of all the human beings that create things every day, and as if these things were a garment, and they place this garment into the world so that the world can nourish from this. So speaking about diversity in the media is speaking about our lives, is saying that, or how a media outlet, a screen, should be our mirror. And on the screen, we should have a mirror into the world. But if that mirror is not part of our lives, how can we expect to see that on the media? And the other way around, if it's not in the media, how can it be part of our lives? We are in Uruguay, and the world, Uruguay has given us people like Eduardo Galeano, and now we can talk about an upside-down world. In theory, media outlets were created to communicate things. And communicating is meeting, is talking to each other, is having a conversation, and we can recognize each other. And of course, there should be, love should grow, and we should nourish each other. Nowadays, media outlets are really far away from this objective. So speaking about diversity in the media entails this. It entails life, what happens in life, but not in the media. So when we talk about vulnerable groups and who are they, what happens with them, they're not part of the media. Once again, it's the upside-down world. I would like to turn it back so that we can focus on the vulnerable groups. Who are vulnerable? Because we don't have diverse media outlets that mirror real life. I believe that the vulnerable groups are the 90 or 95% of people that do not belong to those groups and who are not, and we're not getting nourishment from them. It's we are in the information era, so we should have, the highest diversity levels when it comes to content creation. But what is happening is actually the opposite. There's a monoculture instead of having cultural diversity. Because what is different actually enables us to grow. Human beings have evolved through meeting each other, by seeing what is different, taking from that what nourishes them, and leave the rest. And this is how communities evolved and transformed, because people learned from each other. But now we're afraid of what is different, and that keeps us in a sort of prison. Mass media outlets, we have so many screens, so much technology, but these media just lock us in. We are disconnected from life, from diversity, and they disconnect us from this vicious cycle. We keep playing as, you know, as if we were a hamster. We're running behind we don't know what, actually. This is very serious, because nowadays we are defining content, and what is being included is excluding other things. These algorithms that lock us up, this situation needs to change. Today we're talking about censorship during the event we have. It has been a major topic for a long time. What happens in this upside down world is that most people self-censor from within each home, each community, each society. So it's not necessary to censor people, because you censor yourself. And you stop creating, you stop exercising your artistic freedom, you don't exercise your freedom of expression, you censor yourself. You lock yourself up, and you become the consumer media outlet that is already part of the market. Communication is part of the market, and it has lost its human nature. How can we recover humanizing communication? How do we make it human again? And that's the question that is very difficult to answer. There are no recipes. There are no recipe solutions. We've been trying to work in this regard in Mexico. We find that these must be experiences that have to do with a number of principles. You need to work with other people. For instance, with public policy making. In Mexico, we have a content cycle based on the 4 elements. Can we please see one of the slides? So the 4 elements: water, fire, earth, air. So you come from the earth. That's where you sow the questions. We think about what we want to produce, what we want to share. In Colombia, Alirio from Belén de los Antaquíes, a colleague. How can I use this? He says that without a history, there is no camera. Public policies can actually come down from the pedestal, because governments still think that they're, helping people, that officers need to develop policies because they should, that there are already human rights because the 2005 Convention has been ratified. But actually we need to bring things down to earth. We need to go back to earth. We need to go to people, meet, talk. From person to person. We are humans. Regardless of your position, we need to discover what we can do together. And that's what we're trying to do in Mexico. We need to discover what we can do together, and we will build it as we go along. Some are officials, some are public media, some are community media, others are people from the arts or from culture. You just need to come down from your position that has stigmatized you because it has assigned you certain political roles or social roles. We need to discover how we can create something different, how we can recover our humanity within social media outlets. Sorry, that was a bit too quick, but I would like to finish by playing a 1-minute audio clip, and then I can close my intervention. Thank you. This is rain sound at San Cristóbal de las Casas. It drizzles, a guajolote sings, and thunder answers. We have rain, thunder, and guajolotes are having a conversation. Water gets accumulated in our boots.
Thank you. This is just a minute from the program Songs of the Rain. That's what we called it in a podcast, which is also on Spotify. This was one of the things that came out of the project of the design of public policies in Mexico. We really didn't achieve a public policy. The national team was a group of many people. And the public media said, we do want to use the content from the communities. And the communities liked this, and they began to organize themselves to produce the content. They have been working for 2 seasons already, and things are being discovered, a lot of obstacles, many lessons learned, but we have begun on that path. We invited people to send in their recording of the rain where they live. And they sent a lot of audios from many parts of the country, and only a few were chosen to participate in that half an hour of the program. And this recovers the rain in many places with an experience of communication where people felt in another way, not only as the audience, but participating. There is still a lot of work to be done. And thanks to UNESCO and thanks to you all for allowing me to share. Thank you very much. I have the uncomfortable role of moderating, so I'm going to have to ask you to adjust to the time that we have. Otherwise, we are going to use more than the hour we have. Cecilia Noce, she's an artistic director and consultant in the region. What are the challenges relating to artistic freedom and diversity in media and relating to the diversity of content? Why should both issues be addressed simultaneously? Thank you, Luis, for the question that you sent us a few weeks ago. This has made me think about artistic freedom in a different way. The main thing is that attacks to freedom, to artistic freedom, is an attempt to silence voices, values, meanings. This is always the objective. Attacks can be from murders, which we document, kidnappings, harassing, censorship, vandalization. But the idea behind that is to make voices homogeneous. And this has a direct impact in less artists, less context, less language. And this is going to have an impact in the diversity of contents and the diversity of media. It also has an indirect effect, at least in this region. And I believe that in other regions that are represented here, the same thing happens. Many things governments attack either artists of works or works of art as an example. So let us use the example of a president who, in a stream on Facebook, decides to criticize 4 documentaries or 4 fiction short films with LGTB content. And a specific program is produced to deal with that content. And the president takes 2 hours of an afternoon to destroy the documentaries in a very short time. And this affects everyone who worked on these projects, but it also affects the community, the LGBT community, and affects society in general. The same thing happens when a government jails or imprisons a rapper who was the winner of 2 Latin Grammys for a song, and after a year, a sentence of 10 years of jail is requested. This is the case of Michael Osorbo, but the message is for everyone who has listened or who is going to listen to this kind of music. So I think that attacks on artistic freedom in the region, we have to pay attention to them, because this gives us a lot of light. It illuminates a series of matters or issues that are arising from civil society. It shows us the limits of what is possible in communication. Last year, approximately 380 cases arose. Half of them happened in Cuba. In Cuba, what we mostly documented were arrests. At least 60 artists were arrested. There are 7 artists currently under sentence who are already sentenced. And most of them are for a figure that's called desacato in Spanish, which is like disobeying the law. And if I speak of desacato, it's really disturbing because its presence is very strong in this region. In Latin America, we are building very intolerant societies as refers to political dissidents. And what we are noticing is an increase of intolerance. Most of the offline and online attacks have to do with political issues. We are still registering old silencing, both to artists, to LGTB artists, and anything that has to do with the struggle of women. This is in a context where rights, for example, women's rights, or discussions on LGTB rights have made progress, but it's as if society and governments were willing to advance to make progress with certain rights, but not to say anything about it. There is a limitation of representativity there, and it's very violent. There isn't a mural that is designed on femicides that survives over 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks. And one of the new things that we have seen is that many of these attacks to artistic freedom has to do with the struggle for women's rights and LGTB rights. And this is being masked in good habits, protection of children, and issues like this. We are noticing increasingly that for the good of children, we shouldn't have homosexual content, for example, not this book, because children and teenagers must be protected. This is a trend that has happened particularly in Brazil, but also at regional level. So I believe that what artistic freedom allows us to see is that the limits of what is possible, what is possible to communicate and to represent. Lastly, I would like to say that the most censored artistic practice in Latin America is rap and its variants, hip-hop, fan carioca in Brazil. And this practice is very violent. both in bills, drafts of bills. Fan Carioca is a version of hip-hop, which is Brazilian. And in Mexico, Colombia, and the Dominican Republic, there have been repressions in this sense. Rappers are the artists that are most at risk. And the artists that were killed, most of them were rappers in 2021, particularly in Colombia, and it has to do with the violence of drug trafficking. So most of the artists that were murdered last year were rappers, hip-hoppers, or fan cariocas. Rappers are strongly discriminated in the media. They are presented as violent, as marginalized. Their lyrics are usually violent and misogynistic, and this places the media in a very ambiguous situation. It's interesting to cross freedom of artistic expression with the concept of diversity of voices in the media, because I think what's happening in artistic freedom, additionally to having immediate effects, it helps us to think about the limits of what is representable in the media. Thank you very much, Cecilia. We only have 10 additional minutes because there is another session after us. So I ask you, please, to adjust yourselves as much as you can to the available time. Ms. Rana.
25, and have since forged a distinguished path in the field. Your work also highly focuses on covering the cultural and creative industries. Even though women represent half the world population, gender inequality in the media persists both off and on screen, and concrete and evidence-based action is lacking, as most states do not monitor gender equality in the media. I want to ask you, how does this impact the representation of women in media content? What can we do to achieve gender equality for the media? Please.
It's running? Okay. Good morning, and thank you, UNESCO, to give me this opportunity to talk about journalism and the cultural section, cultural coverage and everything artistic and media from my country, from Lebanon. First of all, I want to salute. I would like to salute a friend, journalist, researcher, writer, and intellectual who was assassinated in Lebanon last year because of his free opinion and his struggle of diversity and truth, Luqman Slim. And I would like first also to greet, to salute all those who's working in serious and deep cultural and artistic sector, journalists and artists and writers, which no longer has a large place and space in the media in Lebanon and in the Arab world, where hate speech is loud, especially against women, homosexual, and transgender people. And where artists and intellectuals live under the siege of the economic crisis and the struggle to finance their projects, and where censorship is getting stronger. For example, a band such as Mashrou' Layla is banned only because of homophobia. And also, I would like to say that in Lebanon we have nobody protect journalists, even the official syndicate of journalists. So because we have now, after the revolution of October 2019, we have a alternative journalist, which I was with 5 journalists, women journalists. We work to be on Earth. So concerning your question, if you have a look to TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat, and you see the videos, pictures, everything, you can see the impact of the mentality and thinking of the rising generation in the view of women for the new generation. So I can see all the new generation and adolescent with her costumes or makeup or everything. So we can see how they transmit their image from one generation to next. We can understand how women are dived and how they transmit their image to one generation. So I think now we have a strange situation concerning the women in media, because all the content, even in Arab world and in Lebanon, it's not for women and it's not with women. It's promoting also the content, promoting even films, even series, even music, even news. They promoting patriarchy. And also they promoting the stereotype and the hypersexualized role in life. So I have here some numbers from IMS. The data we have shows and women only make up 24% of person heard, read and or seen in newspaper, television and radio news. Even worse, 46% of news stories reinforce gender stereotypes, while only 4% of stories clearly challenge gender stereotypes. And also we have 27 occupied by women in media, and 73% occupied by men, but all the management jobs are occupied by men, and all the leaders in media is men in Arab world, I see. So we cannot see never editor-in-chief for a newspaper woman. No director of editing or director of ATV, or all is men. Right. So women, it's not, this is an impact of the gender inequality in media. We cannot see women in the leader places. And also the impact is when you see Twitter in Arabic language, you see the violence against female media worker. So the safety of female media worker has in recent years developed into a serious concern, as it creates another obstacle to gender equality within the media. The majority of female media workers experience gender-specific harassment both inside their organization, outside them, and more increasingly online. So gender-based violence both digital and physical, pose a threat to freedom of expression and access to information. Silencing female journalists constitutes an attack on democracy itself, as it leads to self-censorship. Women retreating from the public sphere because of the harassment. Almost a third of female journalists consider leaving the professional because of the threats, intimidation, or attacks they endure. More than a third of female journalists avoided reporting certain stories for the same reason. This is this information. It's noted by IMS and by Maharat and Skies in Lebanon and in the Arab world. So almost half of female journalists experience online abuse. Many of them indicate the abuse has led them to become less active and even inactive on social media, like me, sometimes, while it's a crucial part of that job. Threats are often of a sexual and racist nature, targeted at the person instead of the content, making the workplace an unsafe environment for women. This leaves the male-dominated field of media with even fewer female voices. So what we can do? Okay, first of all, the education of women is very important, because many people from our country or from Arab world, they don't know that they have rights. They don't know they have something to do, and they don't have confidence in themselves. Second, we should increase skills and leadership abilities through mentoring and development program for women and journalists. We should include news about and for women, because you know in everywhere media has a key role in shaping issues, and if women are excluded from the process, it's emblematic of how society is excluding women and not giving them due voice. So we want to make more spaces for women's stories, for homosexuality, for culture, for artists, because culture and journalism, it's like sisters, or like it's very important. So third or five, we should make sure that women occupy all roles in the newsroom, including senior positions. This is important because concerning to my experience, sometimes our director don't understand that women have another situation, that women have family, that women have feelings, that women have something to do. For example, when I have live, they called me, you have live after 5 minutes, but I'm woman, I cannot be after 5 minutes live, because I have family, I have daughter, and even I want to put makeup, I want to make my hair. So this is very simply, and even when I call my director-in-chief, and I told him I have a story about this woman, he told me, oh, it's nothing about harassment of some women. He told me it's nothing. So let's go to trending. Let's go to trending. I think trending in journalism now, it's not a good choice. So make sure there is a strong 5, make sure there is a strong commitment from management, because if management is not committed to guaranteeing diversity, initiatives can quickly crumble. And the last thing, I think we should create pay equality for women and men, and we should push people to make media not financed by government, media not financed by banks or commercial association. So we should, UNESCO should, and UN should help journalists to make their media outlet, to make their liberty media outlet and be comment s'appelle? Not authorized. Yeah, independent media. So this is very important if we need diversity. So we need independent media also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Najjar. Finally, let's hear Ms. Awa Girard. Your platform, Deedo, features over 12 million of tracks and is accessible in 6 African countries as well as France and the United Kingdom. What has been the impact of digital technology on the accessibility of diverse musical content? What led you to creating the Deedo platform, and how could such initiatives be replicated in other continents? Please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Luis. I'm honored to be here. I'll try to wrap it up in 2 minutes. Well, I would like to start by saying that I really appreciated Shoshana's intervention earlier this week. She talked about how nothing escapes the web today, and culture and music definitely do not escape the web. We went from vinyls to cassettes to CDs, and now digital music streaming. But when you look at it from a macro perspective, the impact digital music has on accessibility of diverse musical content is quite positive. Today, all you need is an internet access, and you can browse infinite music content most of the time for free worldwide. There is a myriad of tools out there for artists to help them promote their music. However, when you take a closer look, many issues are still not being addressed by mainstream content editors. The first issue to me refers to devices. Sometimes digitalization goes a little too fast. We tend to neglect the impact of compatibility, meaning that in most territories, for example in Africa, OSs are generally 3 to 4 years behind. So when a streaming service updates its functionalities or implements new features, the end user somewhere in Africa no longer has access, because over 80% of devices on the continent are from second-hand market. Another issue refers to algorithm. They give us the false impression of discovery. In reality, the system keeps us in a loop of genres or geographic region, and you actually end up listening to the same type of content without even really realizing it. Also, independent artists do not necessarily have the competencies and the knowledge to apply the many tools that are available on the web to help them promote their music. Most of the time, they don't even understand the mechanism of streaming. How do the content get on the streaming services? What are the rules behind the assets? For example, the cover of the content you're trying to promote. What is a EAN, a UPC number? How is the content being monetized? Many artists are left alone with very little knowledge about how this digital industry works. It also limits creativity in the sense that artists today have to adapt to what works. But the question is, what works for who? If I am a Senegalese artist trying to compete with an equivalent market size American artist, there is no way I can top his or her numbers because my markets are not on Spotify. So that's mainly one of the reasons. There are many others why I created Deedo. So Deedo is a Pan-African music streaming service. And at the time, an artist friend of mine was complaining about not monetizing his content on digital music streaming services, giants. And when I looked closely into it, I discovered that African artists who fill up stadiums in their respective countries do not reach the equivalent in numbers on streaming services. Because their market did not have access to the services or simply do not identify to them. I will again refer to what Shoshana said again on Monday, that relying on big platforms brings inequalities. That is the exact point. It's very unequal. So one of the answers was to create a service that is culturally adapted to local habits in Africa, putting forward local content, but also giving access to international content. The app is translated in Pulaar, which is the language spoken by over 40 million people worldwide. We integrated local payment methods, and we made the choice to manually curate the content through playlist and not just rely on algorithm that will let you in some type of a circle. You know, when the giants rule, they decide. So we believe that the answer is that we have to create our own tools to be able to protect our heritage, help artists gain visibility, and something that corresponds to the public and the end user. I will stop there because I know we're late. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Awa. Está claro que hay mucho que hacer para defender la diversidad de contenido.
It's clear that there's a lot to do to defend free voices in communication means. And I thank you all for participating in this panel. To close our session, and in the spirit of the objectives of UNESCO Convention on Cultural Issues, I have the pleasure of inviting Uruguayan artist Señor Faraón for a brief performance. Thank you.
Sí, claro.
Bueno, hola, hi, hoy. Yo soy Ismael. Señor Faraón sería...
Hi, my name is Ismael.
So I'm gonna play two songs from mine. You can find my music on Spotify and anywhere. So the one is... the first one has a local rhythm called candombe, a local rhythm from Uruguay, a bit psychedelic. So, ¿por qué muestra sus dientes si no los tiene, Señor? Tiene un solo colmillo afilado por su propio respiro. Y yo a su vez soy prisionero de pensamientos extraños. Y mi corazón, repucando a la izquierda, ruge pesado. Si está pasando un mal momento, grítele a otro, Señor. Antes no me importaba nada y ahora es todo al revés. Después de la caída siempre tengo algo entre manos. Urge el sosiego, pero no puedo más que renacer furioso, como la vieja que parece eterna, barriendo su territorio. Solo una vez vi una oveja negra y estaba entreverada en su madeja. ¿Cómo llegó a pensar el hombre? ¿Cómo puede ser tan salvaje y tan sutil? Y para hacer al fin de ese amor y paz para su propio bien. Y así piensa nomás, para mi bien yo solo quiero escuchar mi canción en llamas. ¿Por qué este ómnibus a la periferia va siempre lleno, tan lleno como las caras que van adentro y asoman lento? Siento que estoy que tiemblo y que no llego, mi Dios. Ahora sí que me siento parte y que soy parte de mi propia canción. Casi me mata del susto en el medio de la noche mi alucinación. Nunca creí en un ángel y ahora dudo por sí o por no. Y si me invitas a tu rancho, me quedaría ahí hasta el fin. Te comería en la mesa como un estado febril. Yo quiero amor y quiero paz y mi diamante de rubí. Tener semblante de imaginador sin pulir piedras es tener nada. Primero hay que ser libre de verdad y así elevar la llama. Primero hay que tener en el corazón canción en llamas. Primero hay que tener en el corazón canción en llamas. Primero hay que ser libre de verdad y así elevar las llamas. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Bueno, por cuestiones de tiempo, due to time issues, I'm gonna play one song. And this is the record of early that I play in my entire life. Yes. So, this one is called Contigo el Salto. With you, the jump. So, a tu casa caminé, volví a hacerlo sin los pies, extrañándote, hoy te vi. Hace tiempo que paso así, al lado tuyo quedé mirando, camisas viejas en el armario, quedé confuso necesitando, te estoy debiendo, te estoy buscando, me estoy debiendo, contigo el salto. Tu silencio vive en mí. Mi silencio no lo quiero para vos, porque el tiempo que se va sin decir es cariño sin descubrir. ¿Cuán cerca estamos o qué tan lejos? Nos pasan cosas al mismo tiempo, señal de a bordo de nuestro vuelo. Te estoy debiendo, te estoy buscando, me estoy debiendo, contigo el salto. Te estoy debiendo, te estoy buscando, me estoy debiendo, contigo el salto. Gracias. Y gracias por la invitación.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation.